Welcome to episode 169 of Girl Take the Lead, where each week we explore womanhood and leadership. And I'm your host, Yokani. Today, Suparna Vashisht joins us to talk about her passions, which are driving social change in the areas of sustainability, conservation, gender equality, and mental well being. She's the co founder of Women Back to Work, an initiative that helps create systemic pathways for women wanting to re enter the workforce. For the last 20 years, she has worked for conservation nonprofits in the areas of strategy, communication, and development. Suparna helps us learn about some fabulous nonprofits that are doing great works of kindness to sustain the planet and the animals in it. Enjoy the listen. Here you go. Welcome, Suparna. I'm so excited to have you on Girl Take the Lead. We were just talking, and it's been like 24 years. We worked together at LifeScan in the marketing department, global marketing.
Yeah.
And here we are, recovered from corporate wounds and continued on with our lives. So, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on this podcast. And yes, like you said, it's a long way away from what we were doing before. 20.
Absolutely. And I think for our listeners, I had seen a lot of your posts on LinkedIn about your efforts in conservation and your care for the planet. And, we try and give the spotlight to organizations on the podcast that are doing the kinds of work that you're pointing out. So I think it's also interesting, for us to see like where we are in our lives today
Yeah,
versus when we were so corporate.
right. I do believe, though, that what I learned in corporate America was immensely useful to me personally and then professionally in what I gravitated towards doing in conservation and sustainability, because the rigor and discipline that you learn in corporate uh, in the corporate environment, where you're looking at things with the profitability angle. If we do
Mhm.
this, does it move the needle? Or if we have this much money and we have 30
Right.
to choose from, how do you prioritize? I found those things to be immensely useful in the nonprofit world.
Yeah, definitely. The good filters to kind of take a look at and then assess how things are going. But why don't we start if you would just sort of tell our listeners a bit about your background and what you've been doing over this 24 years.
Yeah, so I'm Suparna. I believe if something has always been done a certain way, now is usually a very good time to do it better. And I believe one person can make a difference, and that individual actions add up to a sea change. Um, and I think leaving LifeScan started me on this journey of individual actions and trying to bring about a sea change. And I found myself first moving into the freelance world, still continuing to do what I was doing, but then transitioning into the nonprofit world of conservation and sustainability, and finding that I had a lot of strengths and knowledge from the corporate world that were immensely useful, like I was saying, in the nonprofit world. Um, so that's what I've been doing for 24 years, is making that transition. I would say it took me about 5 or 6 years to transition over
Yeah.
fully. Yeah.
So your advocacy for social change, I don't remember too much of you talking about that when we worked together, but how did it get a hold on you? Like, how did you find that passion, or had it always been there and I didn't really know it?
It was a journey for sure. And it was an evolution. When I look back, I can see how it was gradual, it wasn't sudden. So, like, as you know, I spent over a decade in corporate brand management and profit and loss responsibility roles. And then when I when I left LifeScan, I had young children, so I was looking to do something freelance so that I had more flexibility. And during a lull in, in between two of these freelance projects, I got to know of Sierra Club and I volunteered for the local chapter and I became the chair of the Sustainable Land Use Committee. And I told them, I said, I don't know nothing about sustainable land use. And they said, that's okay. You'll learn. We're all volunteers and that's what we do. And sure enough, I did. I mean, I learned a lot very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and then that gradually and over a period of a few years steered my career in the direction that I realized I was most passionate about was sustainability and
Mm.
conservation. And secondarily, further down the line, women empowerment and more recently, mental well-being. Um, but one of the reasons why I left LifeScan and I didn't join another company is because I was already at that juncture where I was not sure that I wanted to stay in corporate America because I was starting to question why am I spending, 8, 10 hours a day working for something that I find myself no longer believing in? And
Mm.
like the routine annual price increases and then the focus on quarterly growth and year on year growth. And I was just getting increasingly uncomfortable about it. So I had interviewed with other companies and I decided not to go back into a company setting and do freelance instead, where I could control what I was doing, and so I could do what I was that I liked. Um, so I think I was already there, but it just crystallized when
Yeah.
in between projects I started doing this work with Sierra Club. Um, and then while I was with Sierra Club, I um, learned about the factory farming. So I did not grow up in the U.S., but I was born and brought up in India, but I was raised an omnivore, unlike which is unusual because actually more than 60% of India is vegetarian. But anyway, I was raised omnivore. But as I worked for Sierra Club, I learned about factory farming, and honestly,
Mhm.
I was horrified. I had no idea that's where where our meat and dairy comes from because it was not like that growing up in India. Um,
Mhm.
and so then I stopped eating all kinds of meat except for organic free range chicken and organic dairy products and eggs. Um, but then gradually then I found and people would ask me, what happened to you? People who knew me for a long time, why are you not eating all this stuff? And I would tell them. So my advocacy started accidentally. In,
Uh-huh.
and when people, I also found that I had to articulate my reasons so that I could talk in an informed manner because people would push back, which was great because then I could use the information I had learned and share my concern about the negative impact in an informed way.
Yeah.
Negative impact on the environment and the negative impact on animals. I mean, I didn't want my food to come with a side of suffering and pain and torture and cramped living conditions. Um, I was pretty honest about that when people
Mhm.
would ask me, and I know it made some people uncomfortable, but I also noticed that a lot of people actually appreciated the information I shared because a lot of them were like me and they did not realize the impact. And then it became a puzzle for me to solve, one that I was used to solving as a marketer. Why
Yeah.
were some people persuaded by what I was saying, but other people were not? Is there something else that I could share that would be more persuasive? And so, I found that some people were motivated to make changes because of the inhumane aspect of animal consumption. But some of them didn't care about that, but they cared about the impact on the environment. And others didn't care about either of that, but they cared about the safety and health of their kids
Yeah.
or cells, because um, milk from cows that have been injected with hormones have these effects and so on and so forth. So I really didn't care what the reasons were as long as I was able to find the one that would persuade someone to make a change for the greater
Yeah.
good. And I started using this approach in my personal interactions and my work, and it just
Yeah.
grew from there.
Well,
So
I think you're giving us a great example, right, of how one person can shift others
yes,
and
absolutely.
make a difference.
Yeah.
And so that's, are there other examples that you have that are kind of like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I myself was influenced by someone, right? Like the people that I was working with. And so I from the start really believed that one person can make a difference. And so what I some other examples are I started eating organic. Um, and most people were doing it at that time. This was many years ago because it's better for your health because you don't ingest the chemicals from fertilizer and pesticides. But actually, my prime motive was that organic foods are better for soil health and water quality. And honestly, I don't know where I get that from, but I think even as a child, I felt very connected to just nature. And
Mhm.
I thought a lot about how trees grow and, like whether animals are suffering or thriving. And so for me, buying organic was because it's better for soil health, it's better for water quality. Um, Fertilizers and pesticides degrade the soil by killing beneficial bacteria, makes it harder to grow food. It also reduces the nutrient value of food. And in addition to that, they also pollute water bodies. It gets sucked down into the aquifers, lakes, rivers, oceans, and that damages marine ecosystems and its inhabitants. Um, and my this journey was influenced by, like I said, by a friend,
Mhm.
and also by a lot of news reports. When the seed was planted in my head, then I became curious and I started looking, seeking information on this. And then I shared the information.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
in turn, many of my friends have been influenced by what I've shared and have switched partly or entirely to organic. I still remember, I think about 10 or 12 years ago, a friend of mine said, I have you to blame because my grocery bill now is, 15% more expensive than it used to be because now I'm buying organic. I was thrilled. So
I'm sure they weren't.
to that point, when I first started down this path, organic foods were, I think, about 30% more expensive than conventional. But today, it's a
Yeah.
much smaller premium and
Yeah.
so affordable by many more. And it's only because of the early adopters
Right.
who supported organic and advocated for it, which made it more economical for farmers and consumers to go organic. So again, this is the power of, one person influencing 10 people, influencing another 100 people, and so on. Um, the other thing I started doing again, like now this a lot of this is not that uncommon, but when I first started doing it 10, 12 years ago, it was quite uncommon, is composting. I mean, I was astonished at what an amazing ripple effect it had. Through one of my sustainability jobs, I've learned that if you compost, you can reduce your trash by 75 to 90%. I mean, I can't remember now whether I was curious about whether that was really true at an individual level as well, or I just wanted to reduce trash. But I started doing that. I had to train my husband and kids who protested, but actually, it didn't take very long. And even though I knew the numbers, I was astonished by how little we were sending to landfill. And then I realized that I didn't need a plastic liner for our trash can because there was everything going in there was dry. Nothing was wet. Everything that was wet and biodegradable and stinky was going into compost. So I got rid of our plastic bags
Mhm.
from trash. And I also found out that there was a time when in actual person was emptying your trash bin that you put out on the road, but now you have these big robotic arms from the truck that come and empty
Yeah.
it. You don't have the same reason to use plastic bags. Even the trash sorting facilities actually tear open the trash bags for sorting before they send things out to landfill. So in one new habit, we reduced what we sent to landfill. We enriched the soil for the fruits and flowers in our yard, and we reduced our use of plastic.
Yeah.
We also lowered our trash bill because we could smaller.
Well, I'm always surprised when I travel and there isn't systems set up, for recycling. Like even LA, even when you go down to LA, there's no system for how to do this. And I'm always in my head, I'm so well trained. Like let's, separate things. Let's put compost here and, just separate. It doesn't happen everywhere. So
No, it
anyway,
is.
so some of our listeners, maybe you can be a person who advocates this for your town, your city. That
Yeah.
would be great.
And talking about recycling, I found out that less than 9% of the plastic ever produced has been recycled.
Mhm.
And 50% of all plastic produced is for single use. You use it once and you throw it. You think of shampoo containers, water bottles, a lot of things. Um, and all of that goes somewhere. In fact, the estimate is that every minute we're dumping a garbage truck of plastic into the ocean. So reducing plastic became another thing that I did. Again, this was 15 years ago, and people would still look at me weirdly when I, insisted on not buying the single-use plastic water bottles and taking my reusable bags everywhere. And I used to take them to drugstores and to the mall and everywhere. And I stopped using those plastic produce bags in the stores, the grocery stores. I got rid of plastic food wrap and plastic Ziploc bags. I started using, either wax paper that can be composted or aluminum foil. And then I think my next big step was my car always has little reusable boxes, steel boxes or glass boxes. And when I go to a restaurant, I take them in with me so that I can never finish the food. So instead of asking them for a box, I just put it in my box and I take it
That's
home.
terrific. Why not?
And that's something that people like on neighboring tables have said, "Oh my God, that's such an obvious idea. I never thought of it, and I'm going to start doing it." And I get so happy when
Yeah.
I do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's you making the example for others. And let,
yeah,
let's talk about some of the organizations I know that you're involved with, and especially those um, in that have to do with the ocean, because I can hear the passion and the care for the planet in your voice and the things you care about. And I think the Marine Institute, the Maui Center there, the Ocean Center is one, right?
yes, it is. The Marine Institute, MOC, it started out as part of Maui Ocean Center, but it no longer is, but they still call it Marine Institute, MOC. That works for the survival of coral reefs and sea turtles in Hawaii.
Mm.
The coral reefs in Hawaii have gone through a lot of damage. So it's really, I've been diving, I'm a diver, I've been diving there for about 20 years. And I have seen firsthand the degradation. All species of sea turtles are endangered or highly endangered, and the green sea turtles in Hawaii are no exception. So I found out about Marine Institute when I started visiting Maui really frequently. About 7 years ago, we started going every year, and we would go for weeks at a time. And I spend a few hours a day in the ocean, snorkeling, diving, kayaking, and seeing the Hawaiian green sea turtles in the water is my
Mhm.
absolute favorite experience for a variety of reasons. I can go on and on about it. It's a whole other podcast, so I won't. I won't. But one time, I came across a turtle with a fishing hook, and the line was all around its shoulders and front flippers, and it was heartbreaking. It could barely move. So when I got out of the water, I wondered how I could help. And so I found out that, among other things, the Marine Institute rescues sick and injured turtles and then you know, rehabs them, brings them back to good health, and releases them. So I called them And they sent out a team to find the turtles so they could take it in for treatment. And since then, I've just become a regular with them. I call in turtles that need help, and I join in the search efforts whenever it's possible so I can show them where I had seen it. And what I also found out is that this is the only turtle hospital in all of Hawaii. So the injured and sick turtles from all the other Hawaiian islands also get sent here. And it's a really small organization. They need financial support for medical supplies and to pay staff to locate, transport, treat the turtles. Nearly all of the sea turtles, like I said, are endangered. So this makes the Marine Institute's work even more significant. And the a baffling fact to ponder on is that even though the ocean covers more than 70% of our planet and we depend on it for clean air, water, and so much more, less than 1% of all global charitable giving goes to protect the ocean and its inhabitants.
Mm.
And so for me, trying to support organizations that are doing good work to protect the ocean and its inhabitants is really important. And the Marine Institute has an Instagram account, so you can see the turtle rehab and videos. It's very uplifting.
And for our listeners, I'll have all the links in the show notes for you on how you can help the organization and where you can donate. And so I'll have that for everybody on. We're going to talk about a couple others too. The Maui Nui Marine Resource Council.
Yes. So as I said, I spent a lot of time in Maui and in the ocean snorkeling and diving. I honestly, it's a spiritual experience for me. And about 15, 20 years ago, when I left LifeScan, I started learning about the declining health of corals and other marine life. And I've been diving for 27 years. So I've been seeing this firsthand. It's not just reading about it. In fact, I started reading about it because I started seeing it firsthand. And as I started visiting Maui frequently, I just wondered how I could give back and help improve the health of the ocean around Maui. Because like I said, the reef, the coral in Maui, in Hawaii is gone through a lot of degradation. So I found out about Maui Nui Marine Resource Council through somebody who lives in Maui. And what I like about it is that it works with its community to create culturally appropriate solutions, which are also science-based, to combat the threats faced by the local reefs. So, for example, to improve the declining reef health, MNMRC takes a systemic or holistic approach by working Moka to Makai, which is the Hawaiian concept of how all living things are interconnected from the mountain to the sea. So Moka means mountain and Makai means sea. And, the local Hawaiians have, to them, it was a very important part of their culture to actually care for the ocean. And they understood that to care for the ocean, they had to care also for the mountaintop because everything flows from there down into the ocean. So MNMRC really works with that. So for example, last year, they prevented the equivalent of 63 school buses worth of sediment pollution from entering the ocean water, from the mountaintop to the ocean. They've launched Hawaii's first reef-friendly landscaping program to help properties reduce the use of harmful chemicals, which inevitably end up in the ocean, harming coral reefs, fish, turtles, and other marine life. So, you go to Hawaii and you see these beautiful hotel resorts with landscaped, manicured lawns and golf courses. And a lot of them are using really strong fertilizers and pesticides. And the runoff pollutes the ocean, kills the coral. And I have observed many turtles with tumors, and scientists believe that this runoff is a major cause of these tumors. And so reef-friendly landscaping and agriculture is critical, and that's what MNMRC is really advocating and pushing for. They also were one of the first groups to start testing water quality in the burn zone after the Lahaina fires last year.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And they continue to test for water quality at 39 sites in West Maui, where which had, the brunt of the fires took place. Again, it's a very small team, but it accomplishes a lot. They need more funding. And it would also be helpful if visitors to Maui were to ask their hotels and condo complexes if they have reef-friendly landscaping. Because this is, again, the power of the individual. If people ask their hotel, do you have reef-friendly landscaping? Then the
Mhm.
hotel will say, oh, this matters to the people who are paying for our services, so we should do something about it.
Yeah.
Um, as for me, I help out on an ad hoc basis with specific needs, but also more general things like, giving input on marketing and communications, because as you know, that's my training and my experience. But people can support MNMRC by donating on their website, mauireefs.org, and they can learn more by following them on social media. And like I said, I think one of the most powerful things would be to ask their hotels to contact MNMRC for reef safe landscaping.
Yeah. I think you're turning us all into advocates. Be out there.
That's really succeed.
Yeah.
Succeed.
Doesn't take much, does it? I mean, it really, like when you're saying it's a one
Right.
person can make a big difference.
Yeah.
Now, what about Project Coyote? That has a very provocative name.
Does. And I think, as you know, from a marketing standpoint, sometimes you need to be provocative to get
Mhm.
people to engage. Um, Again, this is another one of those very interesting things to think about. Environmental nonprofits receive less than 3% of all charitable donations. So from the start, our family tried to overcompensate by focusing almost exclusively on the environment. Our support started with protecting wild forests, rivers, animals all over the world. And a lot of it was focused on Africa, actually, because there's so much biodiversity there. And
Mhm.
there are also so many endangered species there. But then I came across Project Coyote and I was intrigued. Why protect the coyote? It's an animal most people love to hate. But the more I learned, the more sense it made. And I also liked that Project Coyote focuses on protecting wildlife in the US. And, it made me realize we've lost so much wildlife in America ever since people from Europe and other parts discovered it.
Mhm.
I mean, this land used to be rich in biodiversity with pumas, wolves, bison, bears, foxes, coyotes. Most of us now don't get to see any of that.
Mhm.
But Project Coyote promotes compassionate coexistence, and it works to protect the wild carnivores that are key to biodiverse, thriving ecosystems.
Mhm.
And through Project Coyote, and, you can learn more about why the coyote, it is provocative, but also they do provide very important ecosystem services. So there is that reason too. But through them, I just learned so much about the wildlife here in our backyard. And one of the things I learned about was this program called Wildlife Services, which is a program of the US Department of Agriculture. But it's a total misnomer because this Wildlife Services is essentially an extermination program targeting a long list of wild creatures, some of which are endangered. And
Mm.
this is done on behalf of agricultural and ranching interests in a whole bunch of states in, all over the US. The Wildlife Services Program has no oversight and no requirement to disclose its activities to the public. In 2023, under this program, 1.4 million native animals were killed. Animals such as gray wolves, which are endangered, coyotes, which
Mhm.
perform ecological services, black bears, mountain lions, bobcats, foxes, beavers. And the way they're killed, there is immense suffering involved because any and all means are allowed. Strangulation snares, which leads to slow death, aerial gunning, chasing and shooting with hounds and ATVs, where the animal gets wounded badly but is not killed, so it's a very slow death. Killing contests. I had no idea. Killing contests. And Project Coyote works to stop all of this. So it just,
Sounds like a good one for us all to check out to
yeah,
support.
yeah, it is. And like I said, our support went to protecting wildlife all over the world, but I hadn't found one that was so focused on the US. And I'm living here. I want to make an impact, positive impact here. So I started donating to them like more than 10 years ago. And then about 2 years ago, I started supporting them for marketing strategy and communication. And now I'm on the advisory board. Yeah, I encourage everyone to look into them. Apart from donating, they have a lot of opportunities where you can really make a difference by doing, you know, whatever your time allows. You can write a letter to your representative about these killing contests and other things, or you can um, educate your neighbors about how to coexist compassionately with the local wildlife like mountain lions and coyotes and all of that. So there's a number of ways you can get involved.
That sounds so really great. I think the last one we were going to talk about is One Reef Micronesia.
Yeah, or and women back to work. I thought you
Oh,
wanted,
okay. Yeah, that's right. We'll talk about that one too, because that was the one you started.
yeah. Um, yeah, so women back to work. I would love to talk about One Reef, by the way, because it's ocean conservation, and I learned a lot about ocean conservation with them. But let's talk about Women Back to Work, the
Mhm.
organization I started. So this is again one of those things where, I've always had these questions about, like I said, why are we doing things this way? Just because it's always been done this way is not a good enough reason. So over the years, my husband and I have provided advice and guidance to many of our women friends on how to get back into the workforce after taking a break.
Mm.
Sometime in late 2014, just coincidentally, I was coaching three different women friends and acquaintances to help them get back into the workforce. And I realized it is so challenging and onerous for women who are trying to get a job after a break. Their odds of even getting their resume from the application pile onto the interview pile is dismal. So I said
Mhm.
to my husband that, it seemed to me that there needs to be a formal system that allows and enables women to enter and exit the workplace easily.
Mhm.
We've established systems for diversity hiring, but that does not include women who have taken a break. It's really very odd. Uh, Yeah. And my husband thought that was a worthy idea. He was on the executive team of a large tech company, and he immediately said, "You should do this. And I can introduce you to heads of HR at several companies. So you can explore and hopefully execute that idea." And I was sitting there thinking, wait, what?
I know the feeling.
Realized, yeah, he's right. And so a few weeks later, I had a meeting with an acquaintance who owns a recruiting company to see if we could collaborate on this initiative because I knew very little about the HR and recruiting side of things. If I'm going to go meet with HR heads, I need to know how recruiting is done. So she agreed, and that's how Women Back to Work came about. I started thinking about all the different ways we could present this idea as a specific program to HR leaders. And again, this is, the marketing training coming in play. And I did research and I discovered just the previous year, 2013, Goldman Sachs started what they called a returnship, which is like a summer internship for college kids, but this is targeted at women who want to return to the workforce. So I created this modified version of that. And this acquaintance of mine with a recruiting company and I started meeting with HR leaders and proposing returnship programs and short-term contract work as a low-risk way for companies in the Bay Area to hire women who had taken a break.
Mhm.
So that's how it came about. That was, I think, I believe it was 2015 was when
Mm,
we started approaching companies. Now I am no longer on involved in selling to the HR and hiring managers. I instead focus on the women by offering a series of year-round free workshops through the San Jose Public Library that supports women returners through their job search process, because that's what I was doing originally, right? Like helping
yeah.
women get more confident about speaking about themselves and interviewing, and we're doing the resume. We just finished our series in April, so it's a 6 workshop series, and we'll be resuming in July. And
Okay.
people can
So
find.
for those local people who are listening, I'll have that in the show notes for you in case you want to check it out.
Yeah, and actually it's online. We used to do in-person workshops, and during COVID, we moved to online, and we found that more women were able to attend that way. So we've continued to do it online.
Okay.
There are other websites as well where women who are looking to get back to work can find really good resources. There's a website called pathforward.org.
Mhm.
There's a website called inhersight.com and wherewomenwork.com. And both of these have a section for women returners. Pathforward.org is oriented specifically for women returners.
Great. So before, did you want to just quickly say anything about One Reef?
Yeah,
Or
so Reef, I worked for many years. It's, I think, the NGO I worked for the longest. And what I liked about them is that we were working with small coastal communities in small island countries in Micronesia. So there's a country called Palau, there's a country called Federated States of Micronesia. And the reason why we were working with them is because it's a very integral part of their culture to look after the ocean and the land, very much like Hawaii. But they don't have the resources for it. They don't have the technology, the science, the money, but they have the passion, they have the motivation. And in the nonprofit world, that is more than half the battle.
Mhm.
In places like Africa and Asia, nonprofits spend a lot of money doing education and outreach with the local population, trying to convince them to protect their forests instead of logging them, or to protect the animals instead of poaching them. And in places like Micronesia, you don't have to do that. They're already very motivated, and
Mhm.
legally they actually own the coral reefs that are in their coastline, and so they are able to take action directly on the ground because they own it. But they need money for rangers and for patrol boats. They need the science. So One Reef had a collaboration with Scripps Institute, and where they come in and they take this imagery of the coral reefs, and then we do it every 2 years to monitor the health and see if what we are doing is helping improve the health or not, and how we can tweak what we are doing. Um, and all kinds of technology and science, and really just, you know, equipping the local people to do what they already want to do.
Wow.
And
Mhm.
it was just very, very satisfying and gratifying. And I stopped working for them about 2 years ago, but I still have very strong relationships with the people that we're working with, that I worked with. In fact, I was there just last month. Um, I was there diving and hanging out with the people I've now called friends, but I worked with them. So
That's so nice. Well, you've been like everywhere. So this is so good. You have shared community. You have shared interests and compassion for certain things. So
yes.
I can see that that must bring a lot of joy to you.
Yeah, it does, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's very satisfying to see, now over the years, I've seen some of those seeds I planted bloom and fruit, and
Yeah.
that's really gratifying.
Yeah. So before we close, what advice would you give to younger generations?
My favorite advice is that don't don't let anybody tell you cannot do something, because no one knows yourself as well as you do. And this is advice I give the women as well, who are trying to get back to work. And they have lost their confidence. And I always tell them, don't let people tell you, oh, I don't think you can do this. No, let people tell you what you can do, but do not listen to them when they say what you can't do. So that's what I would tell young girls, is to really listen to that inner voice and to support it and not be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you will fail, but I honestly believe you learn a lot more from your failures than you learn from your successes, because you take the time to reflect. And then those failures become a really strong foundation for you to go ahead and succeed.
Tell your 20 something self today.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I would just tell my 20 something self to just follow your inner voice, because I always did follow my inner voice. But I did have people telling me that, sometimes following my inner voice made other people very uncomfortable. Like I was talking about advocacy. And when people would ask me, why have you stopped eating meat? And I would tell them in pretty graphic terms. And it made a lot of people uncomfortable. Um, I gradually found better ways of saying it so
Yeah.
that I got the results I wanted in I guess um, less disruptive way as well. But
Mm-hmm.
I would tell my 20 something self to not be afraid and to just you know be disruptive, because that's how you bring about change. But learn to do it in a way that wins friends and influences people instead of just ruffling their feathers so much that they can't see a way to be your ally.
Oh, that sounds like really great advice for all of us. So thank you for sharing that. Anything else before we go?
No, I
You
think
good?
that's about it. I think I'm like I said, I was very delighted to see you have this podcast. It's very different from what you were doing back.
Absolutely.
I think this is fantastic. It's quite interesting, but it is very similar to the women back to work. You're focused on having women find their voice
Yeah,
and encouraging them to do that. So it's interesting that both of us are doing something that's quite similar and yet very different from what we were doing.
exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us and for educating us about all these organizations. I knew that when I saw your posts, especially the ones with the turtles, I'm like, we got to do this. We got to hear about these different things that you're involved in. And just thank you for taking care of the planet and standing your ground and making it good for all of us. So thanks for your efforts.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I hope that with your help, we can get more people to join in.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for listening today, and we sure hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tell a friend about us, join our public Facebook group, Girl Take the Lead, or visit our website, girltaketheleadpod.com. We also have a YouTube channel where your subscription would be appreciated. Once you're on YouTube, search at Girl Take the Lead. And you can see a video version of this episode on YouTube Music. Here are 3 takeaways from our episode. 1, everyone has their own way of being persuaded to take action. One message does not fit everyone. Find the one that can persuade someone to make a change for the greater good. And 2, there are so many different ways to take action, like eating organically, composting, reducing our use of plastic, like I'm trying to do all the time, and supporting not for profit groups. It's all of us individually having a positive impact through our choices and actions. And 3, women trying to return to work after a break face challenges, and barriers. A system for diversity hiring needs to include these women. Our next episode will be a soundbite building on our episode today with Suparna. I found a book, Our Wild Calling: How Connecting with Animals Can Transform Our Lives and Save Theirs by Richard Louv, a book that offers hope. After hearing Suparna's talk about sea turtles and coyotes, I knew I wanted to learn a bit more about how we connect with these animals. I feel like my heart is always there with them. Besides, the book had this most amazing front cover picture of a wolf, and it just pulled me right in. Similar to the different causes Suparna mentioned, this book makes a case for protecting, promoting, and creating a sustainable and shared habitat for all creatures, not out of fear, but out of love. Please join us again and talk to you soon. Bye.